Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So back with me again, and today I'm gonna presentation about democracy. And first, let me introduce myself. My name is Alianur Fitriani, and I am from Faculty of Law, Hasanuddin University. Okay, as a bachelor and professional candidates are expected to first affirm stance regarding the nature, instrumentation and practice of Indonesian democracy, which is derived from Pancasila and the 1945 Constitution of the Republic of Indonesia. And the second is able to analyze the nature, instrumentation, and practice of Indonesian democracy, which comes from Pancasila and the 1945 Constitution of the Republic of Indonesia as a vehicle for running a prosperous and just state. Okay, our main topic is talking about democracy. First is democracy concept. What is exactly democracy means? Etymologically, democracy comes from Greek language, namely demos, which means people, and kratos or kratein, which means government or power. So demos kratein or demos kratos means people government or people's power. Democracy, according to Abraham Lincoln, is the government from the people, by the people, and for the people. Terminology. There are many views about democracy. There is no single view of what democracy is. Democracy can be viewed as a form of government, as a political system, and as a pattern of state life with the accompanying principle. What is aspect of democracy? According to Carlos Alberto Torres in 1998, democracy can be viewed from two aspects, namely a formal democracy and substantive democracy. Formal democracy refers to democracy in the sense of government system. In a democratic state can be run by implementing the presidential system or the parliamentary system. Substantive democracy points to how the democracy process is carried out. The process of democracy can be identified in four forms of democracy. The first is predictive democracy, the second is developmental democracy, and the third is equilibrium democracy or pluralist democracy, and the last is participatory democracy. So, what is the values and parameters of democracy? The first is to settle disputes peacefully, and second is ensuring the peaceful implementation of change, and the third is organizing leadership change regularly and limiting the use of force, and to acknowledge and consider natural diversity, and the last is ensuring justice. As is democracy based on Henry B. Mayo, and according to Robert Dahl, parameters democracy is the first is control over government decisions, and careful and honest selection, and the right to vote and be elected, freedom of expression without threat, freedom of access to information, and the last is freedom of association. And chapter 1 is talking about urgency of democracy. Why was democracy chosen as a way for the form of government to achieve the goals of a state, namely welfare? Every citizen longs for a democratic government that guarantees the upholding of people's sovereignty. This desire is based on the understanding that democratic government provides an opportunity for the growth of the principle of respecting individual existence. To participate in the life of the state to the fullest, therefore democracy needs to be cultivated, maintained, and respected by every citizen. And there are democracy country criteria according International Conference of Jurists Bangkok. The first is constitutional protection of the rights of citizens. The second is judiciary that is free and impartial. And the third is free general election, freedom to express opinions, freedom to organize, and the last is civic education. And chapter 3 is talking about historical, sociological, and political sources on democracy sourced from Pancasila. There are three sources that animated the democratic ideals in the heart of the Indonesian nation. The first is the tradition of collectivism from village consultations, and the second is Islamic teachings that demand divine truth and justice in society, as well as brotherhood between humans as God creators. And the last is Western socialist understanding, which attracts the attention of the national movement leaders because of the humanity that it defends and become its goal. And the fourth chapter is Indonesian democracy. Based on its ideology, Indonesian democracy is democracy based on Pancasila. Pancasila democracy in a broad sense is the highest sovereignty or power in the people, which in its implementation is inspired by the values of Pancasila. Pancasila democracy in a narrow sense is the sovereignty of the people exercised according to the wisdom in representative deliberation. Indonesian democracy is constitutional democracy, and apart from the formulation of values and norms in the 1945 Constitution, the Indonesian Constitution also limits the power of government and guarantees the basic rights of citizens. What is not found in the universal pillars of democracy is one of the pillars of Indonesian democracy, namely democracy based on one Godhead. It is a characteristic feature of Indonesian democracy, which in the view of Maududi and Muslim is called theodemocration. Universal democracy is democracy with secular nuances, while Indonesian democracy is democracy with one and only Godhead. Besides having universal characteristic, democracy also has the unique characteristic of each country. And the characteristic of democracy in each country depends on each ideology. And chapter 5 is talking about how do we develop a democratic life. As a democracy rooted in national culture, the democratic life that we develop must refer to the ideal foundation of Pancasila and the constitutional foundation of the 1945 Constitution. And we can call it as 10 pillars of Pancasila democracy. And main pillar Pancasila democracy, the first is democracy based on one Godhead. The second is democracy with the intelligence. And the third is democracy with people's sovereignty. And the fourth, democracy with the rule of law. And 5 is democracy with power sharing. Next is democracy with human rights, democracy with an independent judiciary, and democracy with the Otoda, democracy with the prosperity of the people, and the last is democracy with social justice. And the 6th chapter is talking about democratization. Democracy as a view to life. Democracy will not come, grow, and develop by itself in the life of society, nation, and state. Democracy requires real effort from every citizen and its supporting tools, namely a conducive culture as a manifestation of mindset or frame of mind and society setting or community design. The concrete form of this manifestation is the use of democracy as a way of life or a view of life in the ins and out of the state life both by the people or society and by the government. I think that's it, my presentation about democracy. Hopefully you all already understand, and sorry if I have a word mistake or I'm fasting in explaining. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.